Hi everyone. Today I wanted to do a bit of a different video. I want to look at the Ubiquiti software updates that they've done recently that have allowed for dynamic routing over IPSec VPNs, so specifically OSPF. So I've got here a little UXG-LITE, one of the smallest in the range, which I'll show off shortly. But I just wanted to show the diagram, what I'm going to try and achieve today, and then I want to build on that hopefully in a second video afterwards. So we use a lot of Juniper SRX devices, and more we are actually now using Ubiquiti devices for a lot of our customers. It gives us a lot of easier management with the UniFi controller. They're a lot cheaper, and some of the features are actually easier to use than the Junipers. Now we'll continue to use the Junipers in our data centers and higher end requirements, but for a lot of branch offices and sites like that, the UniFi is getting very good. So what I want to show you is what I've been doing recently is getting OSPF announcing routes into the Ubiquiti from our Juniper devices. So I'm setting up a sort of a lab network here, and I will go through that process. So I've got a Juniper SRX 300. The external interface is 172.22.216.2. That's actually connecting to a Juniper SRX 100. I'm just treating this as the ISP, so there's no direct connection between the Juniper and the Ubiquiti. The Ubiquiti will be on another interface with a .217 instead of a .216 on a /24. That should be /24. And then I will have a IPSec tunnel between the two. And I will also then run OSPF across the two. What I want to do is announce routes from both, so this will be the LAN here, which I've got a little Dell small form factor, that'll be on .99, and then over on the Ubiquiti side I will have a Raspberry Pi, which is on its LAN and .100 there. So those, the goal for today's video is that these two will be able to talk to each other directly, but in future I'm going to build out a WireGuard network attached to the Ubiquiti here, and then advertise the routes up via OSPF to here. I do have BGP here. I was fiddling with some other stuff, not really relevant, I don't think, for this video. So that's the layout. So we're going to start fairly simple, and then I'm hoping to build on that with some extra sites and show you some of the more advanced routing that we can now do with the Ubiquiti controller, and it's now got a zone-based firewall as well too, which I'm very excited by. But today, primarily going to look at IPSec and OSPF.
Okay, it's a bit messy, but I'll try and explain best I can. So this is the SRX 100. It's an old EOL device, but they're fanless and they're reliable. It's only 100 megabit. So this is the connection to my just normal network. It's just a NATed connection. I then have, this is talking to the Juniper SRX 300. The black one here will plug into the UXG-LITE. The little Dell here is plugging into the trust LAN interface on the Juniper, and then the Raspberry Pi will connect to the LAN on the UXG-LITE. Now I haven't actually used this one, so it is brand new. So I'm going to need to firmware update it, and then join the UniFi controller. But it's a very small, nice, kind of like a old Apple Airport Express kind of looking thing. It's only got two interfaces. You can power it by USB-C, and yeah, it's got 2 gig ports. Now, normally I actually probably wouldn't recommend these ones just because I think they're a little underpowered. I'd actually go for the UXG, it's called Max. It's got the 2.5 gig ports, and it's got like a 5-port switch or something on the back as well. That's a lot better. But I got these for cheap, so I think it's kind of cool. I'm going to try the smallest of the lot. And I might do some performance benchmarking later, although I'll need to upgrade from 100 meg because I think I'll be able to get more than 100 meg across it. For most people these days, I'd probably actually recommend the cloud gateways, not these standalone devices. But because we're an MSP, we use the UniFi controller and have that all hosted in our data center. So for us, still the UXG range is better. But I think long term that's going to change with Ubiquiti Site Manager, and a lot of that SD-WAN stuff that they're doing now is only available if you've got a cloud controller, basically, as in one of their cloud like UDMs or keys, the cloud keys. Whereas unfortunately the site manager won't let you do SD-WAN with a hosted controller. So long term we might move off that, but for now it's fine. We're not the SD-WAN stuff's not really that useful for us yet because we prefer to do the OSPF tunnels ourselves and set everything up properly. So this will be the device we're using, and I will adopt that now and upgrade the firmware. I won't bother showing that. Lots of other videos on that one. So I'll get that started and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I've just got the UXG hooked up to my Mac laptop and I've just turned it on for the first time. And because I haven't got this is just hooked up to as a static IP address option, it's not detecting anything. So if I go WAN static, DNS server, IP address was 217.2. I'm hoping this will work. I don't quite know if I've got the NAT set up for this to actually connect externally. So we will see. Let's go apply. Excellent. So that's worked. Alright, so manually connect to UniFi network, other device. I don't actually know. I just want to connect it to my controller. Self-hosted. Cool. I will just populate this and we will come back. I've just created a new site in our hosted UniFi controller. We are running network 9.0.108. Version 9 has the new zone-based firewall, so we will take a look at that in another video. There's nothing, as you can see here, there's absolutely nothing currently set up at all. I've done no configuration, so I'm about to join the UXG-LITE to it. I do apologise about the noise a bit. It's very windy here in Sydney at the moment, so it's been a bit crazy. So you'll have to cope with that. It has connected to our controller and it's just asking which site to assign it to. So that's the lab network. Let's go next. And I suspect that will be about all I need to do. The light on the UXG has just gone from white to blue, so that I assume means it's now adopted. And then we will make a few changes in the controller first, just to change the subnet on the LAN, so it's .100. And then we'll probably jump into the Juniper next to configure the IPSec tunnel and OSPF. Okay, so we are now back on Windows in the UniFi controller, and it looks like it's got firmware version 3 out of the box. I did just make a change with the updates back to the official release channel. I was fiddling around with some pre-release stuff, but that's not required for what we're doing here. Now, the couple of things I do like to change on the controller, I'll change it to Australia, is the turning on the debug tools. So this is a really cool feature. It allows you to use the web console to effectively SSH into the gateway or the switch or the access point. And so it will pop up if you click on the device and then click the cog here and go debug.
and then that will bring up a console connection to the device, and that's really good for doing some basic network tests. So if I wanted to, ping something external or trace route something, make sure DNS is working, that's really useful. So I love that feature, so I always turn that on. Unfortunately, it does sometimes get turned off with firmware upgrades, it seems, but turning that on and then the debug is a fantastic feature. So we can see the uplink is 100 megabits because it's connected to the old Juniper, but that's fine. So I'm going to click upgrade, and yeah, so we're going to go to version 4.0. That is actually fine for what we're going to do. In 4.1, they have added they've added BGP for the bigger devices. Unfortunately, not the UXG Pro, which I don't understand why, because the UDM SE is getting BGP. I'm hoping that's just an oversight. I have noticed that the firmware on the UXG range is slightly lagging behind the UDM devices, which I'm a bit disappointed by, but not a big deal. 4.0.20 is fine. I think I did have a few routing table issues with some older firmware. I'm pretty sure, though, that's resolved. I think it's even better in 4.1, but that's not required for what we're doing here. So I'm just going to go into the network and change this to 100. So that, I think everything else can be default. So that'll mean I'll just assign the devices .100. So I'll connect the Raspberry Pi shortly. And that's upgrading. While that's upgrading, though, I can probably start setting up the VPN. Is it going to let me do it while it's upgrading? Yes. Okay, so we're going to go, we'll call it to Juniper SRX 300. Let's grab the key. Just put it in a notepad doc. There. Remote IP will be 172. So we're going to talk to the Juniper on the other subnet. Now, you've got two options, policy-based VPN and route-based VPN. Historically, policy-based was what all sort of firewalls used back in the day. They actually negotiated as part of the VPN process. They negotiated what subnets were included, and that was historically how it used to work. I always hated policy-based VPNs because I thought that they were just clunky. Route-based VPNs are much better. They kind of effectively turn, at least in the Juniper side, but more similar now with the Ubiquiti, they effectively turn the IPSec tunnel into an interface itself, into like a network interface. So that allows you to do your own, you can do static routes to it. You can just treat it like another interface, so it's much better. Now, tunnel IP, you need this for the routers to talk to each other for OSPF. I also think it's good too. It means if you do a trace route, it can be quite easy to see what's going on. So you can just pick, really, if it's just between two devices, you can pick really whatever you want. I'm going to go with just something that's quite different from everything else. And I'm going to do .2 on this one. I'm going to make the SRX 300.1. And so this basically means the SRX and the Ubiquiti can talk to each other here. And that's how the OSPF tunnel they'll be communicating with these IPs between each other. And remote network. So this is where the magic happens, is dynamic. And that means that it will be learnt via OSPF. It's really good too because we set up a subnet in our data center, so we use that for basically all our networks, and so our office was .6, while another site may have been .3, and the problem is we couldn't add this as like a override, like a single route in the UniFi, because it would conflict with its local /24. So it meant we had to add every single individual subnet manually before this feature came out. Now that it's dynamic, it just learns all the routes and it doesn't have any problems. So it's much, much better. Now, from a IPSec side, look, you can use IPSec version 1 or 2. Both, I believe, I've got both sites working with both with the Juniper. In this example, I'll probably go with the auto. So I'll set that up on the Juniper so we don't have to change it here. But normally I would suggest AES 56 at least. And that would be like the minimum kind of spec that I would recommend these days. But for what I'm doing today, that's fine. It's actually really interesting. I have a client with an older Edge router, and they're doing quite a bit of traffic across it. And I had to go and look up the Ubiquiti website because they do hardware offloading, but they only hardware offload specific encryption types. So I was only getting like 80 megabit through it until I worked out that I think I had to downgrade it from 256 to 128, or maybe it was the hash, I don't remember. But once I did that, I was pushing 500 megabit through the IPSec tunnel. So I don't know with the UXG-LITE if there are any specific functions that are offloaded better or not. So again, for this video, it doesn't matter. So we'll stick with auto. I think all of that can be correct. So I'll just record UXG-LITE is that. And we'll click add. I suppose we can set up the OSPF as well. Let me just see. Okay, it's upgraded. Cool. Let's go back here. So we go into routing, and then we go OSPF. Now, router ID, that just basically needs to be a unique ID. It doesn't really matter, so that's fine. And so we create a new area. By default, 0.0.0.0 is the default, and it's the normal. Select networks. So these are the networks that you're going to advertise the routes over the tunnel. So I just want to advertise the .100. Save that. We add that area. And do I need to? I think I changed this to 20. Actually, let's just leave this as a default for now. Yes, and I think that should be sufficient. I don't want to advertise anything else. I did have an issue with the redistributing static routes. It was actually redistributing connected routes when I tried it. This is still a little bit funky. The other thing I find a little frustrating still is you can't actually see the routing table. There's no place to see what routes have actually been learnt via OSPF. So I can click into here and it will tell me once it's connected, and I might actually need to. I think I need to actually add it on the tunnel as well. I think once it's connected, yeah, point to point, yeah. So I think I need that. Once it's established, it doesn't show you what routes have been learnt. So that I think is a bit silly. I'd love to see a routing table. Now I think there is a command line, so you go into the debug and do that if you wanted to. Again, though, not going to bother with that today. And then everything else is fine for now. I don't think there's anything else that I need to configure. So we are basically done on the gateway. I will plug in the Raspberry Pi so that that can get a IP address off the UXG-LITE, and then let's plug in that. That might take a sec to boot up, but then it should pop up in here, and then we can start pinging that from our Dell OptiPlex. So let's start the config on the Juniper. Okay, we are now on the Juniper. Now I'm going to do this all command line because I really don't like the GUI, and I don't think I've ever configured a Juniper with the command line. So yes, if you're not interested in this side of things, you can skip over this. So the first thing we need to do is to create a interface that we're going to use for the tunnel, And so that is STO, and then we're going to edit unit 1, set family inet, and then this is the IP. This is going to be the other end of the IP that matches the UXG tunnel IP address. So this is what OSPF is going to run on. Did it not like that? Set family inet address, I think it is. So I'm going to be doing mostly this off the top of my head, so I'm sorry about that. So now we've got the interface. The next thing is, so the Junipers have always been zone-based firewalls, which is lovely. What I would normally do for a VPN is create a new zone. So that means I can control the policies between the VPN and the trust network or untrust. So edit security zone, I'm going to call that VPN. I'm going to add the interface. I'm going to add host inbound services, system services, ping. That should be all we need to do on the interface side. So one really cool command, you can go show pipe compare, and that's going to show you the config that is going to change. So that's great. And then the next thing I love, I can go commit confirmed to, and that what will do, that will apply the configuration to the Juniper, but if I don't confirm it within 2 minutes, it will roll it back. So if I don't, if I lose remote access to it, and I screw something up in the config, it'll roll it back automatically. So I love that feature. It's one of the best features. The Ubiquiti edge routers actually have that feature too, because it's based on was it Viata or whatever it was called. So they're slightly kind of a similar interface to this. Unfortunately, this SRX is one of the ones that has the slow flash in it, so committing is super slow. So it's actually going slower than I remember, but anyway. So if I've still got access, I can just commit again, and it will just confirm it and not require, it won't roll it back. So those two things are really cool. If I did the other cool feature too that I really like on the Juniper is, let's say you start doing some config. So let's say I go set, it doesn't matter, I set something up, but I'm like, no, I don't want that. I can just go roll back 0 and it'll roll back to the current saved config. So that's useful. So we've got the interface, we've got the, so I'll need a security policy to allow traffic in and out of this new zone. So if I go edit security policies from zone VPN to zone trust. So trust is where the Dell OptiPlex is going to sit. And then I need to edit a policy, and I'm going to just call it a VPN to trust. Set match source, any destination, any application, any set then permit. So it's type show. I can see that is going to allow everything from the VPN to the trust. Now you can control that. That's the nice thing about this firewall here. Even though you might establish a VPN with a UniFi, you might not trust everything on that network or something, or you want to restrict what they can access. Maybe you just want them to access something. So that's what you can do here. Now I also want to allow everything from the trust network on the Juniper to the VPN, and so I will set the same, so edit policy trust to VPN, and we'll set the same thing there. So if I go top, and now I'm going to go show compare, so I can see now those are the two things I'm going to add. But let's start. So that should be, off the top of my head, should be all the firewall rules that we will need. Now let's start building the IPSec tunnel. So we've got two parts in the Juniper. We've got IPSec and IPSec. IPSec is the phase 1. And so the first thing I need to do, now this one I'm going to have to look up some probably my firewall to remember what I'm doing. But so the proposal is what encryption is going to be used. So we can set, so for example, we had DH group, which was group 14 on the UXG, set authentication method, which I think will be pre-shared key. So that's going to be the password that we had. So I will grab that. No, I think it needs to be SE. Oh no, I need to just, no, sorry, this is the proposal, not the, I don't set that here. I need to set the encryption algorithm, which was 256. I think CBC is what matches with the UXG. And I'm sure I'm missing something else. Lifetime seconds. So this is how long the tunnel, this is like how many seconds it's active before it rekeys, like it re-establishes its, like it redoes the security key. Now, that if you configure this correctly, you shouldn't lose, there should be no, or you might lose one packet. But a lot of times, if people haven't matched the retry, the lifetime, the devices might get out of sync, and sometimes they're trying to rekey when they shouldn't be, and that's what can cause like VPN tunnels to be slightly less reliable. But really, you should not lose packets while this is happening. So that's the proposal. So that's the phase 1 proposal that that should match the UXG. So that's the first thing. Then we need to create a policy, and the policy is going to be called UXG. And so this is where we set, so we're going to say it's going to use this UXG proposal. We're going to set the pre-shared key, and we're going to set mode to main mode. Main mode authentication is, basically you need to have a static IP address on both ends. Now the Juniper also supports something called aggressive mode. It's not as secure, but I don't think the UXG supports it. So yeah, so really you do need a static IP on both sides when you're using an IPSec tunnel with a Juniper and a UXG. All right, I think those are the 3 things there. Now we need to create the gateway. This is just this is the actual underlying tunnel. So we set the IC policy, which is the password. This is where I don't really remember. So external interface, it's going to be going out our gig interface. We set the, I don't think we need to set the local address, but we need to set the address, which is the UXG's WAN address. So that was that. I think that's all that needs to be set on phase 1. Now let's go into IPSec. This is where we set up phase 2. And so again, we need a proposal. So we have perfect forward security, keys group 14, and I need to set up a policy as well. So let's proposal do that. So on this side, so the phase 2 rekey is usually an hour, whereas the phase 1 is longer. That's just sort of standard, doesn't really matter. We are AS128 again. C. I need to set the authentication algorithm. I don't think I set that on the phase 1, and that was SH1, I think. Sorry, a lot of thinking here, but that's okay. It's half the fun. Protocol is, do I need to set that? ESP, I think. I'm going to have to go back and check some config. So I don't think this is going to work, the first commit. So probably what I will do is I might paste the configs, the config that I end up getting working correctly in the as a link or something on the video for everyone's benefit. Okay, I think I didn't set proposal UXG. I needed to also set the authentication algorithm. Yes. SH1. Cool. Now let's go back into IPSec, and I need to edit to the VPN. And this is like where we're finally setting up the actual VPN. So you can see why like there's a lot of preference for Ubiquiti. It's a lot simpler. Saying that though, like if you use the web interface on Juniper, maybe it's easier, but it was so slow and just not very fun to use. I much prefer the command line. So we are now going to bind the interface. So this is effectively binding the VPN to this STO tunnel. This is effectively like turning that IP address on in the settings in the Ubiquiti. So it means that this VPN is bound to this tunnel. One really cool thing with the Junipers, if you've got all Junipers, they can all be bound to one tunnel interface, and then you effectively have like a big network where they all talk to each other in like a broadcast kind of manner. And they have something called a next hop IP address. Like it learns the IP address of the tunnel of the other tunnels. So you can set up an OSPF like point to multi-point link with the Juniper, and then it will establish a session with all of the Junipers kind of dynamically. It's a lot sort of more advanced, but again, not something that I need to worry about now. So I set the gateway. I set the IPSec policy. I usually set establish tunnels immediately. Both basically means that this side will try to establish a tunnel, and the Ubiquiti will also try. Do I need anything else? Probably do. Don't think so. I am going to wing. I don't think this is going to work. But let's just look at the config quickly. So yeah, there's quite a lot of config you've got to do. So we've got phase 1 with the remote tunnel. That all looks correct. That looks correct. Look, it looks correct off the top of my head. I very rarely get a VPN up and running the first time when using when you're doing two different brands. They all have their own little fun differences. But we will see. If not, I will pause this video and debug what I have done wrong. And actually, I'll show there's a couple of commands on the Juniper that are getting quite good. So if I'm in the config mode with the hash, so you can see here I can go run, and then I'm running outside of that mode. So I can go to like a ping, for example. So I can go run show security IPSec security associations. Holy crap! So that's phase 1 up, and then IPSec security associations phase 2 is up. That I don't believe that's not something that I would have expected to work off the bat, but it seems to be up and running. Let me just quickly check the. You won't see this because I don't think I'm sharing it, but yeah, the Ubiquiti interface is showing it's up as well. So that's fantastic. So that's really cool. Now I won't. So the other network is so if I go run show route 192.168.100.1. BGP, why am I getting, yeah, this is, I've been fiddling with BGP as well. So, oh no, so it's just, so you can see here, this is going to be the LAN interface on the UXG, but you can see here that it hasn't found a direct match for that route, and it's actually just giving me my default route. So if I trace route to that, so if I go run trace route, it's going to go out the default gateway and not go over the VPN. Run trace route 192.168.100.1. Yes, it's going out my ISP basically, so not very useful. So now we need to set up the OSPF. So if we go edit protocols OSPF, edit area So the interface is the VPN tunnel interface, which I need to set. Then we need to set the interface type, which is point-to-point. This is where the Juniper, you've got point to multi-point. That works great if you've got all Juniper devices, but I think I did play around with that, but I don't think that works on the UXG. Not that I would expect it. Then we want the hello interval at 10, and then we want the dead interval at 40. Now you can probably configure those to be lower if you wanted, and then we set the neighbor to the 990.2. Show compare. Cool. Hopefully that is all we need for OSPF. I think I need to allow that protocol in though on, so if I go into edit security zone VPN, yeah, so on the interface, the Juniper is pretty restrictive by default, which is not a bad thing. Set, no, it's, I don't know why they've got two here. They've got host inbound traffic and then systems, oh no, sorry, yes, so set host inbound traffic system services OSPF, no, it is protocols OSPF, yeah, so you need to enable what it will listen on those interfaces, so it allows that, which is fine. I'm quite happy with that. I much prefer a firewall to be sort of everything is locked down by default, and then you open it up. Whereas like a lot of other ones aren't like that. So we can go run show OSPF neighbor. It's an exchange state, which is not what we want, I don't think. It should go, it might take a sec. Let's go run show route. Can I do protocol OSPF? I might need to set up a export policy now so that I'm actually exporting the routes out via it. So let's do that. Yeah, so there is definitely some comms happening there, but not, I don't know, I might need, okay, so I can ping that, that's the UXG, so I can ping that, which is great. So that's good. I might need to did I set the MTU? Where did I set the MTU? Was that? I thought I set the MTU lower somewhere. Show match MTU. Oh, I thought I had some MTU issues before. I think I needed to drop the MTU on the tunnel interface on the Juniper. So let's just see if that resolves it. Fingers crossed. And then, yeah, I'll probably need to set up an export policy to export the specific routes out to the Juniper. I will check that out to the UXG. Don't know if I need to do that, but I will show you anyway because it's kind of cool. Okay, run show OSPF neighbor full. Haha. All right, so that has resolved that issue. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had that problem elsewhere, so I think that was about the highest MTU I could run. So there must be some overhead somewhere. So if I go run show route now, that's looking sick. All right, so if I go run show route 192.168.100.175, which is what the Raspberry Pi is, you can see now it's not trying to go out the default gateway. It is now going. It's learnt it via OSPF, and that is the is the interface that will go out. Now, I don't think we are announcing the routes yet to the UXG, so I don't think this will ping, but let's try and ping 175. It is working. Cool. Maybe the Juniper is run show OSPF run show route. Excuse me. Advertising protocol OSPF. No, don't know why it doesn't give me that option. All right, let's just pause it there for 1 sec. Okay, so yes, the UXG wasn't learning it was learning the tunnel route, but not the LAN interface on the Juniper. So for that, you need to go in to the area, and then we need to edit the interface, and IRB is the VLAN, what they call it. So that's the trust interface, and then we set it to passive. And passive simply means that it's not going to try and communicate out of that interface, but it is going to announce that interface into the OSPF routes. So that should allow us to ping from the LAN interface on the Juniper. So yes, we can get the Juniper to change which IP address it actually uses to ping from. So by default, so if I'm pinging the opposite end, that's working. But this wasn't working from the OptiPlex, because when I'm pinging that, it's actually using the source IP address is actually the VPN interface, which is the 10.98 address. So what we can do is we can set the source to be the Juniper's LAN trust interface, which is 99. And so you can see here that's actually pinging out from what would be like the local network address. So that's working now. So now I can SSH into the OptiPlex. 192.168.99.100. And then I can now ping the Raspberry Pi, which is fantastic. And then I will do a trace route to prove that I'm going over the VPN. So this first hop is the Juniper. Then this is the gateway. This is the tunnel interface IP of the UXG. So we know it's going over the VPN, and then this is the Raspberry Pi. This is really why I really like turning on route mode with an IP address in the IPSec tunnel, because you can actually see now what it's doing. Like policy-based VPNs, you might not even get these two hops. It might just say it's talking straight to that that IP address. So it's not very useful when you've got multiple paths to get to the same site, or you're just trying to troubleshoot. So that's great. So that's working. So now I can SSH into the Raspberry Pi. Hopefully, yes. And then I can come back the other direction. So I can trace route to 192.168.99.100. Why is trace route not found? This is a fresh install of the Raspberry Pi, so it must not have trace route installed, which is frustrating. Sudo bash get install. I don't actually know. I'm sure it's not under trace route. Oh, it is. Okay, cool. Actually, I use MTR now a lot, which is super cool. So if I go MTR 192.168.99.100, you can see, so that's the UniFi. It's doing a DNS resolution. That's the Juniper now. It's .1, not .2, and then that's the OptiPlex. So now we've got a proper VPN set up, and the routes are being learnt via OSPF. So the cool thing, if I have more routes on the Juniper, those will get advertised over to the Ubiquiti. Now, I'm not going to go over there's export rules and policies you can set on Juniper to determine what routes are advertised, but I'm not going to go through that today. So I might just jump back into the Ubiquiti controller now and just show you what that looks like, and we'll leave it there. Okay, so we're now back in the Ubiquiti controller. You can see here the Raspberry Pi is that was connected there, and again, this is the thing I love about the Ubiquiti. I can just click in settings and click fixed IP address. You know, it just makes life so much easier. So if I go back into settings now and then routing and then OSPF, you can see here that it has established the route. So that's great. Now I think, let's just see if I can check the route table. I did find one online, but there's they used to have they had different command line options for the UXG, the old range, to the new one now with the UXG, and I have to go and look at the documentation for it. This was wigging out a bit, so I'm not sure if this is actually going to connect. Hopefully it will. Being a bit slow. It is going through like multiple NATs, so it's not working at the moment, but we'll come back to that another day. But yeah, so everything is up and running. So the VPN is online, and the OSPF is got the full route. So yeah, it's great. And I mean, you can then start doing firewall rules and stuff like that later, but yeah, not required for now. But one cool thing here is now that we've got a route-based VPN, let's say there's another subnet on the Juniper that's not being advertised by OSPF for whatever reason, I can set up a static route now. And so that's the nice thing about a route-based VPN, is it becomes like an interface. So that's very, very useful. So yeah, that will wrap up today. Sorry, there's a couple of little bits and pieces I had to test with. Actually, no, I will bring up the Juniper config now just to show you that side, so you've got a record of all the working config. Okay, so if I go show configuration no more, let's just quickly go through the Juniper configs that we had to do. So the first thing was the phase 1 proposal. So this is just matching the automatic proposal that the UXG uses, and then this is the password, and this is the WAN address of the UXG, and then this is the outbound interface of the Juniper. This is the phase 2. Again, just setting up the policy and binding it to the interface to make it a route-based VPN. Then we have our new zone, our VPN zone, allowing OSPF in and ping just for testing. Our STO interface is our tunnel interface on the Juniper, and we just have to update the MTU. And then finally, we've got our OSPF config here, which we have both the tunnel interface and also the LAN Juniper interface. And we just configured the intervals there and the neighbor. So yeah, all actually pretty easy. Look, I'm really impressed with where Juniper's going with their config. Quite excited to see what they do in the next few years. I really hope we get BGP on the UXG Pro. But yeah, if you found this video interesting, please let me know. I was going to maybe do a video on some IPv6 stuff I've been playing with, and I am going to do some bit more advanced routing with some. I'm going to set up a WireGuard server and then have a Raspberry Pi connect into it, and then advertise the Raspberry Pi's network over that. And the benefit with WireGuard is that we can do that with a dynamic IP address on one of the sides. So yeah, that one I might do later, but if you have any other suggestions, let me know. Thanks very much.